The way we look at it simplistically is to say that you could classify a whole movie, a whole story, a whole book, a whole television play, stage play, song ballad, as falling into one of these categories only. So, a television show could be a situation comedy. All right, a movie could be a physical comedy. You might have, over here, a growth drama in a book. All right, if you wrote in that exclusively, you really couldn't do that without and still have all 4 through lines, because you're going to need to explore, to have a complete structure, universe, physics, mind, psychology. Now, why can television episodes get along with it? Because often we do in stories what's called slicing and dicing of the Dramatica structure. If you slice it, you can take out just one through line and explore that only. So you might have a situation comedy and only look at the objective story. So that you say, we're not going to deal with the subjective story, the main character, the obstacle character. We're just going to come up with a half-hour objective story situation that affects everybody and play it for laughs. You can do that. And then that's all you've got is a situation comedy. Another thing you could do is you could keep in the comic vein and expand out and have an objective story, a subjective story, a main character, and an obstacle character. If that was the case, then you would have an objective situation comedy with a very funny main character who went through physical comedy. And then you'd have a subjective story where the relationship between the main and the obstacle character dealt with a comedy of manners, maybe a unity of opposites. You've heard that term, putting unlike people and sticking them together. And finally, over here in the obstacle character's realm, you would have someone who is constantly making errors for laughs. So you'd still have a complete complement of the full breadth of a complete story form if you don't just use one class, one domain, one through line, but you put in all the through lines. Now you've got a completely broad story. But it doesn't have any depth. It's all comedy, all played for laughs. Now that may make it very, very funny, but it's all in the comic vein. What if you want to play it differently? Well, then you can take each one of these areas, since each one is a different through line, and assign a single area that it hangs around for the course of the story. You've got a situation comedy in the objective story, but the main character, instead of being physical comedy, is a person of action playing for thrills. So you have a spy guy in the middle of a situation comedy, and he's a serious, active spy playing for entertainment. He's got all these gadgets. Maybe it's like Inspector Gadget, or maybe it's something well, okay, I'll leave it at that. Inspector Gadget, a funny situation, but somebody who has got all these gadgets and gizmos. You even see that sometimes in the old television program, The Wild Wild West. It crops up all the time. So now you're getting a little bit of depth. You could just stick with entertainment and comedy only, and then maybe have an entertaining concept at the same time that you've got a main character who is a man of action in a situation comedy, and then you could either play it for twists, which gives it one kind of overall flavor, or you could play it with a comedy of errors for the obstacle character to give it another kind of flavor. So you see, right now we're blending colors off our palette, emotional colors off our palette, and we're giving ourselves a little more depth as well. The most depth you could give yourself by assigning one mode of expression to a through line and staying in it would be to put one in each of the 4 modes of expression. So you could put the objective story as a situation comedy and the main character as a person of action, and then make it a biased drama for the subjective story. Now, think of what that would be. A situation comedy in the overall story, but a biased drama in the relationship between the main and the obstacle character. Wow, that actually has an interesting flavor. You don't see that much, but it's perfectly legal, okay, in terms of dramatic structure. And then down here, you would have why it's intriguing, why people should consider it, why it's important. So the point being here is that we can take one from each column, one from column A, one from column B, and from column C and column D, making sure that we have the full breadth of the story by having all 4 through lines examined, and at the same time make sure we have a complete depth of story by having one mode of expression that's different for each one of the 4 through lines. Now that's what happens if we keep things static. If we say, The object of story will always be treated as a situation comedy, for example, through the course of the whole story. What else can we do? We can move up and down the chart, like I said before, and since it's wrapped around like a cylinder, okay, we could take that and just continue to wrap around. We could take our objective story and have it start as a situation comedy and then move into an entertaining atmosphere. And then we have our choice of either going into what or where it is, information about the situation, or going back the other way into situation comedy again and then coming over to an exploration drama. We can move up and down and backward as long as we don't jump over one. As long as we don't skip one, the audience can follow the emotional pathway we've created for them. So we can move them through these 4 different primary colors, or 3 primary colors and 1 luminosity, okay? We can move them through that as many times as we want in any direction and change back as many times as we want, and we can do it as quickly as we want as long as they're able to see the in-between steps, because then they can follow them through and there'll be an unbroken emotional pathway for that through line, for that point of view that the audience wants to examine. So even if you slice the structure and get rid of main character, obstacle character, and subjective story and just have an objective story only, and that's all you're going to have as the scope of your argument, you can still give it depth by moving around the chart. Okay? Now, if you put all 4 into play, now you've got a slot machine, effectively. You've got this big roller and 4 different things. You can come up cherries, grapes, whatever you have. Anything you come up with, the cherries, the grapes, the bananas, creates a different flavor for your fruit salad, for your story. So as you pull the switch over here, boom, okay, it starts to spin around, each one independently, and they lock into place. At any given moment, you could end up with any combination which creates a very fine-tuned flavor, because not only is there movement in the modes of expression from one flavor to another, comedy, drama, and entertainment, but also it's going across different points of view. And since each one is constantly changing, because you're moving them up and down and backwards, then these are realigning themselves all across your story, creating a very complex, almost like a seismograph registering an earthquake, but with 4 cylinders that are playing out side by side. You get all these mixed emotions going on. Drama in one place, comedy in another, entertainment in one place, information in another, and the pathway can be continuous all the way through. When you have a break emotionally, it doesn't work except in a particular circumstance. Here's where it doesn't work. If you have something like Hudson Hawk, the Bruce Willis picture that didn't do very well at all in the box office, and a lot of people find it intriguing again, but they can't connect with it very well. The reason is that they would tried intentionally to make a break in each through line, so that they'd be playing it for drama and then jump up and do it for entertainment. Then they'd go down to information and jump up to comedy. In the objective story, they would have song and dance numbers, slapstick numbers, shoot 'em up scenes in the objective story. And the same thing would happen with the characters. One moment they'd be sitting there dealing with thrills in a high tense scene, and then they go into an action drama and everything would kind of grind to a halt and we don't know why. Because it's like, well, now we're just being somber. It's not thrilling anymore. We've lost the interest. We're bored. Creating that kind of break was an intentional thing to be able to jump around and have all genres in one movie, as it were. It could have worked if instead of making the breaks, they'd simply rotated frequently, and every time we came back to the objective story, it moved another notch, up or down. Every time we went to the main character and saw him in action, it moved to another notch of the main character. Okay, the way a break can actually work is if you want to create mixed emotions in your audience, then what you do is you intentionally take the objective story and jump it somewhere else. But then from here, regarding this aspect of the objective story, you continue to keep it connected only one away for the rest of its line. And where you jumped, you continue to keep that aspect, say a plot aspect of the objective story, within one of where it is, so that you end up with 2 parallel modes of expression about the objective story. Every time you're dealing with the objective story showing the cause of the problem, for example, like that the boat is upside down in the water in Poseidon Adventure, here in Universe, a fixed situation, you play it with one line, that is moving all the way through, whatever. And then at the same time, you go inside the boat, and you've got the objective story of people being on the inside as opposed to on the outside trying to rescue them. And when you show that, you've got a second line going. So you've sort of got the people on the outside trying to get in and save them have one line of emotion in the objective story, and the people on the inside trying to get out have another line of emotion in the objective story, and the two are played in parallel until you bring them back into a same scene where you can connect them emotionally, fix the psychic break, as it were, and bring them back into conjunction to create a single line for the objective story. Now that's an incredibly complex way of handling this. I don't recommend it for beginning writers at all. I just mention it so that you know that even that level of complexity is here. My advice, create a complete story form with all 4 through lines. Make sure that you take each of the 4 through lines and either play them all in comedy or all in drama if you want to have an intense emotional experience in that area of the spectrum, okay? Or if you want to create something that appears to have a lot of depth, like they're promoting right now, American Beauty, as being a movie that has the comedy and the drama, if they've done it right, it's going to be moving through without skipping one in each of the through lines, and at the same time have each of the through lines in a different position every time we see them, so we gain a sense of breadth in each through line, of depth in each through line, and a sense of depth at any given moment in the story, because the through lines are always out of conjunction in their modes of expression. Well, if you haven't done it yet, make sure that you create a chart just like this one, to have and to hold, to love and to honor and protect, because this will allow you to draw out the emotional path you want your audience to follow, to know how you should be making your audience feel at any given point. And therefore, you'll be able to get yourself into that feeling with whatever techniques you need, sound, music, smell, atmosphere that you create of things in your environment, so that you can write from the feeling you want them to experience, and then when you go to the next through line, or if you have several through lines in the same scene and you need mixed emotions, bring in music that makes you feel one way, and a little statue that makes you feel another, and pop some popcorn so you smell something else and it makes you feel another way. At that point, you'll be able to create those mixed emotions yourself and write the scene from there. Little tricks of the trade.